All right, so we're going to talk about patterns and how to make them in Rhino. Maybe we'll talk about Grasshopper, but we'll see. Um, so the way I'm going to approach this, and I don't know how you guys are approaching it, is looking at your patterns, is really what you want to do is just distill your pattern down to its most basic part and then manipulate that part. And I'm going to do that to make things easier. And really, when you're doing patterns, you have like the primary cell, which is the thing that is repeated. And then you either do some kind of translation to that. You either rotate it like down here, you can see here's that piece and it gets mirrored here, or you could copy it and it makes different patterns. And then you take, this becomes a tile, and then that tile gets repeated and you start to get a pattern. Now you can use any kind of pattern. So here's an example of a cell that I made, and then I rotated it around the center, made a tile, and then I made a pattern of that tile, right? And the pattern is based on, right now I'll just use a rectangle, and we can talk about maybe expanding. So start really simple, and just sort of lay out your basic pattern like you've already done. So you guys have gone through a lot of this process already. And then start thinking about like how you can rearrange that particular cell to make different versions of what you want. And so I'm going to do that. You can think about this or not. You may just be building one pattern, but when you're doing patterning, it's always nice, like I've seen in some of the examples, to think about what your pattern would be like if you put a different material on it, or if you maybe did the cell a little bit differently. So, so anyway, let's get to it. And just to finish this off, I'm going to show you an example of what I'm going to do in the next couple of videos. We'll see, how long it takes, who knows. So basically, here I am in Rhino, and what I've got here is a couple of, these are just lines, right? So I've just made my pattern. I've made an arc, made a line through the center, and I've made an arc. I would highly recommend, putting them on different layers so you can control them and not having everything on one layer, just for later purposes. All right, so let's zoom out a little bit, and let me turn on some of my other layers here. So I've got it in rendered mode. Right now, let me go to shaded. It'll be a little less. So here's an example of one cell like I talked about in the previous, and I've just changed the materials on this one, and it's a 2D. This is flat, and what I've done is I've created surfaces and created a block from these, and we'll talk about that later. And then I made a tile, so here's tile 1. Right? And then I made another tile, tile 2, and then I arrayed that first tile to get a pattern, and then I arrayed the second tile to get a pattern. So with the same cell and just rotating those guys differently, you can get that. And then here is a sort of 2.5D. So let me go into my perspective so you can see it better. Right? So if we take a look at these 2.5D, I've gone in and I've rotated those guys. Right, so you have sort of this three-dimensional, although the surface is still non-dimensional, so it's kind of 2.5D really. And then here's that other one, right, rotated into sort of a three-dimensional piece. And then here is this guy arrayed in 3D, so you're starting to get sort of this three-dimensional quality to it, where it might be a wall, or it might be a roof, or it might be something, but it's still a repeated pattern. So we're going to take a look at how to make these guys and update them so you can change them and sort of test them. And that's it. So that's what I'm going to do in the next few.